The groom from a wedding I attended last week admitted to his new bride that he no longer loved her. It came out that he had been cheating on her for a little over a month. Last weekend, one of my girlfriend's best friends got married to a man she had been dating since high school. He'd converted to Judaism, she'd given up a permanent teaching position to move for his new promotion, and by all accounts, they were quite in love. The story goes, as was told by my girlfriend, he had started acting a little distant about 3 weeks before the wedding. She, the bride, wrote this off because he had already moved down for his new job, and this was the first time they had ever been apart from each other in those 8 years, and she just invaded his new private life by moving in before the wedding. So, wedding time, everyone is pretty happy, the ceremony was beautiful, their vows were quite good, especially his. He choked up a few times, she could barely hold it together, but they made it through, all right. The reception was quite fun, as most Jewish weddings are, and we go our separate ways. Last night, I get a call from my girlfriend saying the bride is in shambles, as the groom had just told her that he no longer loves her. He spouts out every cliché in the book, "It's not you, it's me. I love you, but I'm not in love with you," etc. His initial story is that there isn't another woman, and that it's just crazy, but it seemed like he wanted to work his feelings out. Today, the bride decides to check on their phone bill, and lo and behold, there are a bunch of texts and calls to the same number. When she checks his phone, all of the texts were evidence of an affair, including many texts espousing his love for new girl. I actually don't know new girl's name, but she's his co-worker. Many of these were sent while they were on their honeymoon, and many of the calls were immediately after he had called the bride, usually saying goodbye with, "I love you." Mind you, throughout this whole process, the bride had sensed strange things going on with the groom, and even offered to postpone the wedding, or cancel it altogether, but the groom still went through it, while he was stuffing this coworker of his. And I'm gonna ask my girlfriend if this should be turned into a Lifetime movie, at some point. Seriously qualifies. Update 1. My girlfriend is currently assisting the bride in removing personal items from the bride and groom's apartment. They're still going to work on this, but yeah, he's a prick, so he's most likely just trying to save face. Also, his mom, who was previously unmentioned and quite a monster-in-law leading up to the wedding, has apologized to the bride and is now working on trying to sort this all out. Good things do come from tragedy, but this whole situation just bites. I nominate this groom for the Douchebag of the Year award. So Reddit, what's the absolute craziest thing you've ever heard done in a relationship? A year or so after marrying my great-great-grandmother, my great-great-grandfather received a telegram informing him that an uncle of his had died, leaving him a handsome inheritance and a few acres of semi-developed land in the Philippines. My great-great-grandfather promptly parted ways with his pregnant wife to visit the plot and, if appropriate, oversee the construction of a property where he planned to move his spouse, future child and several miscellaneous, unattached family members. A month after his departure, his wife received a telegram in broken English detailing her husband's sudden death from Spanish flu. She and the rest of the family were understandably shocked, but soon undertook the appropriate funeral rites and settled his affairs in England. My great-great-grandmother eventually remarried to a widower whose spouse had also died from the Spanish flu, and her first daughter went on to give birth to my grandmother. A few years ago, however, my uncle, who has taken to cataloging our family history in obsessive detail, found that no death certificate was issued at the time my great-great-grandfather supposedly died beside the one they requested in his absence in England. Moreover, he found a marriage certificate and a death certificate that all but confirmed that my great-great-grandfather had married another woman in the Philippines not long after arriving and lived there for another 30 years or so. TL.DR. Newlywed great-great-grandfather fakes death, starts new life 7,000 miles away from his wife and unborn child. That would be a not-so-great-grandfather. Found out a year after breaking up with a girlfriend that she'd been cheating on me through most of the time we were dating. It explained all sorts of little things, the random bursting into tears toward the end, her general insanity, and hypersensitivity to me doing anything with anyone else. What makes it really messed up, though, is that she cheated on me with my father. I've posted this here before, but it's still a complete mind screw every time I think about it. It's been 2 years, and I've barely spoken to him since. Just hearing his voice still induces a white-hot flash of rage. It's a good thing I leave an ocean away, 'cause I don't want to think about what might happen if he lived close by. I have been a long-time Reddit reader, but this post actually forced me to comment twice for my first time. I absolutely feel your pain, and I've never met anyone with a similar situation to mine. My first real boyfriend and I were very close. We dated in high school, ended up breaking up after a few months but still stayed very good friends. About a year or so later, he was having some issues with his family and came to live with mine. This wasn't too weird because we were still really close friends and my parents knew and liked him. I found out a few months later that he had slept with my mom, and that she was really into him. I found a letter she'd written to him telling him how much she still thinks about him and misses him. My father is a great guy, and my mom and I have always been sort of close, but rocky. I have never felt so betrayed in my entire life. I immediately left our house and refused to speak with either of them. My mom went to therapy, my dad forgave her, and we are still a family. But I can tell you that, about a decade later, I still have an extremely hard time telling her that I love her, and sometimes I can barely look at her without seeing that letter. Sorry to hear that you've had to live through the same. Best of luck. Wow. Well, this is a first. I've never heard of anyone else going through similar stuff. It's not a situation I'd wish on anyone, and I'm sorry that you went through it too. My childhood best friend of more than a decade got married a couple weekends ago to a gold-digging succubus whom we all hated. His own family offered to take the financial hit in the week leading up to the wedding if he called it off. Her family business is marrying rich, and he alienated tons of his friends or regularly fought with his family over her. I refused to attend the wedding, but at least half the wedding party, including his sisters, this girl had no friends, so her only bridesmaids were her sisters, and his sisters also couldn't stand her. Her oldest sister, who was her maid of honor, turned her toast into a narcissistic rant about her own recent divorce, and apparently his family as a whole was shocked how her family conducted herself. He realized on their honeymoon just what a terrible person she was and how she would ruin his life. She told him that she had no intention of ever working again, she had quit her job right before the wedding, or going back to school. She went to 5 undergrads in 6 years, is nowhere close to graduating from any of them, and that she wanted nothing to do with his family ever again. So, they got married on a Saturday, and he asked for a divorce on the following Thursday. Their marriage lasted 6.9% of a Kardashian. I like your unit of marriage length. I had a female friend, we'll call her Legs, and I played World of Warcraft. I used to post funny World of War related pictures on Facebook and tag my friends according to what character they played. Anyway, I tagged her and another friend in one. They started talking and really hit it off. He came up from the States and spent the weekend with her and her daughter. A week later, she is crying and going on about how she thinks she's pregnant. I kid you not. A week later, my friend is calling me. Freaking out. And I'm all, Joe, she wouldn't know she was pregnant that fast, and if she is, it ain't yours. The same day, I head to Future Shop to get a new mouse or something. I see Johnny, a mutual friend of mine, and Legs. I'm all, did you hear? Legs thinks she's preggo. He looks at me. No, she's not. She was asking for a turkey baster of my semen so that she could have another baby. I look at him, and he's serious. He shows me the text messages. Literal, I want to have another baby. We don't even have to do it, I just need a turkey baster and your semen. She was a single mom, who struggled to pay her bills. I just. What? TL, Former female friend told her boyfriend she was pregnant, while asking another mutual friend of ours to impregnate her. That's why you don't stick your turkey baster in crazy. A few years ago, while our unit was in Afghanistan, This idiot that I used to work with was sleeping with this army chick, we're Air Force, on the regular. Well, one day towards the end of her deployment she tells him she's pregnant. He freaks out and tells his wife about the whole thing. His wife decides to forgive him. Meanwhile, he gets orders to a new base, coincidentally about 20 minutes from where his army girlfriend was stationed. Good, because now he can take care of the kid, right? Well, they move there and come to find out the army chick was never pregnant at all, and the whole thing was made up so he would stay with her. Idiot's wife is once again pissed and hurt, but decides to forgive him again if he gets her face tattooed on him. Guess what he has now? A giant portrait of her face right over his heart. Sigh. Back in the day, I had a friend we'll call Trevor. Trevor was bipolar and very unbalanced. He was brought into my group of friends after another friend LARP'd with him and thought he was really cool and he has a BMW and money. At 43 years old, Trevor was LARPing and hanging out with a bunch of 20 to 22-year-old nerds in college, while his wife and 2 young children stayed at home. He worked and had a social life an hour away from his house and rarely ever seemed to want to go home or spend time with them. For some reason or another, he became an important part of our group because my other friends really liked him. And his money and nice car helped, of course. He went to one of our Halloween parties dressed as Hitler, but that wasn't enough to get him booted. The relationship was though. This is the story that I and my friends would forever in joke and call, The Relationship, starring Trevor. Me and my friends were planning a weekend trip to Chicago to celebrate the end of finals. And Trevor offered to drive us there. We said sure, because he offered to pay for gas and we were poor, and stupid. Packing was kept to a minimum because all 5 of us had to fit in his BMW. Flash forward to the Friday we were supposed to leave. Trevor calls the guy who brought him in the group, I'll call him Bill, and says those dreaded words, there's been a change of plans. Basically we had to gut one person from the road trip because Trevor decided he wanted to bring his girlfriend along. His girlfriend was 18, a freshman in college, about to be expelled. I did not want to spend the weekend with a 43-year-old man and his poor naive troubled girlfriend, who didn't know about his wife and kids. I couldn't believe he was still hanging around with us. At that point I didn't want to go anymore, but another friend of mine guilted me into going with and, being a good friend, I couldn't bring myself to bail on her. What occurred was the weirdest weekend of my life. Trevor took my Blue Man Group tickets and gave it to his girlfriend and saw it with her because she wanted to see them. He hooked up with her loud in the bathroom for 2 hours Saturday morning, we had all gone in on the hotel room. He got pissy and wanted us to go to only 18+ clubs because his girlfriend would feel left out. We said screw that noise and got a cab Saturday night to go to a few decent clubs, but not before Friday night was ruined by a run-in with the worst 18+ goth club Chicago has to offer. It was horrible, but the worst was yet to come. On Sunday morning, Trevor woke me up, stole one of my black dresses for his girlfriend to wear, out of my suitcase, and then had her put it on before inviting me into a threesome with them. It was so messed up. Before the long and uncomfortable car ride back home, he put the icing on the skeezy freaking up cake by stopping at the American Girl doll store in Chicago, and picking up a doll for his daughter. I couldn't say a word to him on the car ride home, I was so grossed out. I chewed him out when we finally got back to our home city and told him not to come near me or speak to me ever again. I also advised his girlfriend that he had a wife and 2 kids. They broke up soon after that, and to his credit, Trevor did leave me the hell alone, but he was still part of our LARP group. So, I left, which was something I had been meaning to do for a while anyway, grew out of the whole vampire thing. I'll never forget that weekend, or the relationship. That was a once-in-a-lifetime display of total self-destruction. What a scumbag. I also hope you got your dress back. And burned it. Let's see. My cousin George is a bit of an idiot. He was always kind of a lost soul in high school, was a waste of space for many years after, until he decided to join the Marines. Everyone in our family thought it was great that he was finally doing something worthwhile. While in the Marines, he apparently got 6 different girls pregnant. 6. 5 of them had miscarriages, or so I'm told, and one of them had an abortion. After all of that, you'd think he would have learned to wrap it up. Nope. When he finishes his duties with the Marines, he moves back in with mom and dad at 28 years old and begins dating this crazy girl Kayla. While he was dating Kayla, she once got so mad at him she came over to their house in the dead of the night, slashed his tires, and keyed up his car. What does George do? They get back together. Not only that, he gets Kayla pregnant. Another miscarriage occurs. By this point you'd assume he'd be like, wow, I've had 7 close calls. I should probably start thinking about protection. Nope. He gets Kayla preggers. When the baby is 8 months old, they get married. 5 months following this, they're separated. For about a year after the separation, they are on again off again. George seems to have moved on from her now though, because Kayla is now pregnant. By another man. While still technically being married to George. Sometimes I can't even believe their BS is real. It's almost like watching a reality show. The fact that you say something seems unreal because it's like a reality TV show says a lot about our society. In college, my rich friend was planning her extravagant wedding. About 3 months before the big day, she finds out she's pregnant. For the first few weeks, she went around happy and excited about the baby. Then a few weeks later, I see her drinking at a bar and I was like, what about the baby? And she cheerfully replied, oh, I'm having an abortion tomorrow. I won't fit into my wedding dress if I'm pregnant. Now, anti-abortion people would like to have you believe that all abortion decisions are this frivolous, but they are not. Please don't construe this story as me being anti-choice, because I am not. Still, this was truly shocking to me. She wouldn't be showing her pregnancy that much at her wedding, and she certainly could afford to buy a new wedding dress. Her fiancé completely supported this decision to not let their baby ruin their wedding. Fast forward 6 months, the abortion happened, the big, perfect wedding went off without a hitch, and she's bragging about being pregnant again. Wondered why her all-Catholic pack of friends weren't jumping for joy for her. But this was also the same girl who, years later, called me to yell at me for leaving my abusive husband. She angrily tutored me that, as Catholics, our marriages are supposed to be forever and that all men hit, and as long as they don't put you in the hospital, that's what we have to endure as wives, as long as it doesn't happen too much. Yeah, she was the one to judge if I got hit too much or not. I hope this person is out of your life now. A friend of mine married her husband 4 years ago. He had cystic fibrosis, and she knew going into it that she was going into a situation where she was going to be his only caregiver for an extended period of time. We tried to talk her out of it, but she loved this dude and did it anyway. She pretty much did nothing for the last 4 years but care for him and work as he got sicker and sicker. In February, after being told that he only had a few months left, he received a double lung transplant, against all odds, that basically reset him back to the normal spectrum. Could walk more than 30 feet again, leave the house, have a normal relationship with the woman who had stuck with him through the hardest parts. He repaid her by having an affair 6 weeks later and leaving her. He died from transplant rejection on October 1st. My friend sat next to her husband's mistress in the ICU for 2 weeks, and they each held one of his hands when they discontinued his life support. I don't know, man, what a waste of a pair of lungs. A year and 9 months ago, my cousin's best friend, for 10+ years, became pregnant after a one-night stand she met while out at a bar. Let's call my cousin Emily, and the friend will be Becky. Becky was frightened and mad, but chose to keep the baby and not to involve the dude. Emily was always there for her all along her lone pregnancy, meanwhile caring for her own 2 boys. They were 2 and 5 at the time and she had them with her husband James. So around 2 weeks before this baby is due, a mutual friend of theirs confronts my cousin. Emily. He says. I can't take it anymore. You have to know, Becky's baby is James. So not only did this coward cheat on her, He never actually told her about this baby. So now he's living with Becky and this kid, and the two legitimate boys are left without knowing why daddy isn't around anymore. The worst part is the older boy seems to think Pops flew the coop because of something he did. Nothing anyone says to him will convince him otherwise, and they can't figure out how best to explain the truth to him. TLDR. My cousin's husband knocked up her best friend and she found out through another friend when the baby was about to pop. Someone needs to get that boy a therapist.